If the market dropped 20% this year, would it change your retirement plans or would you be just fine? So let's start with something real. How are you invested right now? And more importantly, if the market dropped 25%, would that change anything for you? Would it change how much you take out when you retire, how you spend? Because that's the question that actually matters. Not what the market might do, but what it would cause you to do. And most people don't think about it that way. They look at their accounts, they look at their balance, and they assume if it's high enough, they're fine. Retirement isn't about a number. It's about how that number behaves when something changes. And that's where people get caught off guard. Because while you're working, market drops are uncomfortable, but they're manageable. You keep earning. You keep contributing. You wait it out. But in retirement, that same drop, it hits differently because now you're not adding. You're taking it out. And if your plan doesn't account for that, every downturn becomes a decision point, not just something you ride through. And that's where the real risks start to show up. And by the way, if you've got questions about your situation, things that you're not sure about, or something you'd like me to cover on the show, I want you to send them in. Email barb@retirefinanciallyfit.com. And I do read those. And if we use them in upcoming segments, then we're going to send you a small thank you gift. Just keep it simple. First name, where you're from, and your question. Because chances are, if you're wondering about it, someone else probably is too. So here's something that most people don't realize. If you retire with $1 million and you take out $40,000 a year, you're not living off interest. You're drawing down your principal. You are slowly liquidating your own money. Sometimes that works, but here's where it gets dangerous. If the market drops early in retirement and you keep pulling income from a declining account, now you lock in your losses. And once those shares are gone, they don't come back. That's not opinion. That's math. You've seen versions of this before. People with plenty of money and things still fall apart. And it's not because they didn't have enough, but it was because it wasn't set up right. And the version that most people experience, it isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's the couple with $1 million or $2 million. They're hesitant to spend $5,000. It's someone fully invested, and every downturn changes how they feel. It's money in multiple accounts with no clear answer to one simple question. And that's, where does the income actually come from? That's the problem. Not a lack of savings. It's a lack of structure. There are really 3 ways that your money produces income in retirement. You spend it, you earn it, or you transfer the risk to someone else. And that's it. Spending means withdrawals. That's your 4% rule. Projections, everything built on taking money out and hoping that the account lasts. And that only works if timing cooperates. If you retire into a bad sequence and it breaks down fast, earning it means interest and dividends. Income without selling shares. It may not grow as fast in strong markets, but you're not forced to sell when things are down. Now that's a very different experience, financially and emotionally. And transferring risk, that's where guarantees come in. Pensions, annuities, structured income streams. You give up some control, but in exchange for some consistency. And here's what most people never see. They're using pieces of all 3 without understanding how they interact. So then what happens? They take withdrawals when the markets are down. They hold investments they don't fully understand. They avoid tools that could stabilize income because they've only heard the negatives. That's not a strategy. That's reacting. And when you're reacting, decisions get heavier. Spending feels harder. You delay trips. You hesitate helping family, not because you can't afford it, but because you don't trust how all this works. Confidence doesn't come from the balance. It comes from understanding. And if you had to explain your income in one sentence, could you? Not your accounts, your income, where it comes from, what affects it, what happens if something changes. If that's not clear, that's where the risk is. because retirement isn't about hoping that things will work out. It's about knowing how they work before something changes. And the biggest risk in retirement isn't losing money. It's losing control of how your income works, because once you start reacting, once decisions become emotional instead of intentional, small problems turn into bigger ones. Now let's look at something that most people completely overlook, and that's taxes. And not the kind that you think about in April. The kind that quietly shows up over time and change how much income that you actually get to keep. You retire with money in different places: 401ks, IRAs, maybe Roths, maybe after tax. It looks like one pool, but it's not. It's different buckets with different rules. And here's where this actually starts to affect you. Let's say you need $60,000 a year. Where does that come from? If it all comes from a traditional IRA or 401k, that's fully taxable. So now you don't just need $60,000, you may need $70,000 or more to net your $60,000. And most people don't plan for that. They just start taking withdrawals and they get surprised later. Those withdrawals can also affect Social Security. It could push you into higher brackets. It could increase your Medicare premiums. One decision impacts multiple areas. And if no one has shown you how that works ahead of time, it feels random, like things are happening to you. That's where people start to feel out of control, not because they don't have money, but because they don't understand how the system responds. In retirement, it's not just about the amount. It's about the order. What you take first, what you delay, what you convert, what you leave alone. Those decisions shape your outcome, not just this year, but over time. And if you get that wrong, it's hard to unwind it later, because retirement isn't one decision. It's a series of decisions year after year. When there's a structure behind it, those decisions feel lighter. You know what changes and what doesn't. You're not guessing. And that's when retirement starts to feel the way that it's supposed to feel. More steady, more predictable. Not perfect, but controlled. And let me add one more layer to this, because this is where a lot of people get surprised. Even when people understand their investments, and even when they feel like they've done a good job saving, there's still one thing that tends to throw everything off, and that's change over time, because retirement isn't static. Your expenses don't stay the same. Your health doesn't stay the same. Your priorities don't stay the same. What you spend in your early 60s is not what you spend in your 70s. What matters to you today may look very different 10 years from now. And if your plan is built only for today, that's where things start to break down later. Most people spend more in their early years of retirement for travel, experiences, time with family, and then things tend to level out. And later, healthcare becomes a bigger factor. So now your income needs aren't just one number. They change over time. And if your income strategy doesn't adjust with that, then you're constantly having to rethink decisions. And that's where people start asking, should we be doing something different now? Did we set this up the right way? Are we going to have enough later? And those questions don't come from a lack of money. They come from a lack of structure and understanding, because when things are set up properly, those changes are already accounted for. You know where flexibility is built in. You know where income is stable. You know what can adjust and what shouldn't. And that's what gives you confidence over time, not just at the beginning of retirement, but all the way through it. And this is something else that doesn't get talked about enough. Your plan doesn't just need to work for you. It needs to work for your spouse as well, because eventually one of you will be making these decisions alone. And if everything is complicated, if everything is unclear, if there isn't a simple understanding of how things work, that's where stress really shows up. And that's why simplicity matters. Clarity matters, not just for today, but for whoever has to step in later. And at the end of the day, this is your life, not a spreadsheet. And the goal isn't to optimize every dollar. It's to make sure your money supports the life that you want without constantly getting in the way. And one more thing to think about before we wrap this segment up. A lot of people believe their biggest risk is making a wrong investment, picking the wrong fund, being too aggressive or not aggressive enough. But in retirement, that's usually not what causes the real damage. It's the combination of decisions that don't seem like a big deal at the time, taking a little more income than planned, letting taxes build up without realizing it, staying in the same allocation simply because it's familiar, None of those feel like major mistakes, but over time, they stack up. And that's where outcomes start to drift away from what people expected. That's why having a clear structure matters so much. Not because it makes things perfect, but because it keeps small decisions from turning into bigger problems later on. And when that structure is in place, you're not constantly wondering if you should be doing something different. You're not reacting to every headline, every market move, every piece of news. You already know how your plan is designed to respond. And that's a completely different way to live in retirement. Most people aren't trying to hit a home run. They just don't want to strike out after they have already made it this far. Now, there's something else that plays into all of this, and it has nothing to do with what you pick. It has to do with when things happen. We're going to walk through that next. So before we do, if you're listening and you're thinking, I'm not sure how all of this fits together for me, then let's talk. Call 800-883-1518 and we'll set up a complimentary discovery call. And it's really a simple conversation. There's no pressure. It's just a chance to look at where you are, what might need attention, and whether it makes sense to go further. You can also go to retirefinanciallyfit.com, request a copy of my book, Retire Financially Fit, along with additional resources that we have put together for you there.